Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Cinephile. This week, we are talking about 2006's The Prestige. This was my pick this week, and I picked it not only because it is a movie I enjoy immensely, but because I think it is something new and fun that Jake and I can discuss. So, Jake, I know you said you've seen this once before. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, so I've seen this. This is actually the second viewing in like, I don't know, probably a month and a half. My roommate Tanner introduced me to it, which if you know Tanner's taste in movies, this is kind of an odd pick. I know you said in our last episode you were the one that introduced Tanner to it.
Right.
But anyway, so uh there's a lot of twists and turns in this, and a lot of it's a puzzle. It's a an illusion to be figured out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a very different viewing experience watching it a second time, knowing like where everything was going. So yeah, it's an enjoyable film. It's really well done. It's got some good performances in it. It's a really good. It's an intriguing and compelling story. It definitely keeps you on your toes and keeps you interested for the whole movie. So, if you like kind of a mind puzzle, if you like magic, you like trying to figure out kind of what's next. This is definitely a movie you would enjoy.
Oh, I completely agree. And the first time I saw this, I didn't put everything together. I mean, this really, I think that the crux of this film and the idea behind it is that we were watching a magic trick.
Yeah,
Like the
really.
film itself is a magic trick. It
Yeah.
has those three different things.
Hmm.
There are three different elements to a magic trick. And the I think that the prestige itself happens so late in the game, in the actual film, that like it really just does line up as a magic trick. And I, while watching this again, it kind of hit me as to that's why this is so compelling, is because the way in which the story is told is it is actually legitimately a magic trick.
Hmm.
I know that this movie was based on a book,
Yeah.
um, and the book itself is kind of, if I haven't read it, but my understanding of the book is that they it's like cross journal, like it's like one
Hmm.
journal against another one. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, so the kind of the elements where Angier is reading Borden's journal and then Borden's reading Angier's journal uh is essentially what the book is, and so they
Hmm.
kind of expanded upon that. But this was written by Christopher Nolan and his brother Jonathan, and they write all of the scripts for the different films. Chris Nolan writes all his own scripts. So, um, but this is very much a Christopher Nolan film as well.
Yeah.
Just the way in which it's shot, but yeah, and it also has some great performances too.
Oh, very good performances. I think um, that's what keeps it interesting, and they suck you in, right? They're master showmen, right? Uh, Hugh Jackman played the
Yeah, I
greatest
was gonna say,
showman. That's kind
actually,
of
I think
that's
another name for this movie should be called The Greatest Showman. Um,
but I
because
mean, they Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, obviously, like two of like the best actors of our generation, right?
I agree,
Um, or I should say the current generation of film. They're probably 20 years older than us, at least.
at
But
least.
uh
Well, Hugh Jackman's in his 50s now.
is he?
Hmm.
You don't look it really.
No,
I
he's
mean,
freaking Wolverine.
yeah, man
Yeah.
is incredible. But what I'm getting at, they're such masterful actors and put on know how to put on such a great show that they step into these roles very well. And I think they're well suited for each of their roles because uh, Christian Bale has a knack, especially if you look, at the time of in 2006 when this comes out, and really kind of his role since of playing, a darker character or a less than,
Forthcoming.
yeah,
Yeah.
a less shiny character, shall we say? Whereas Hugh
Hmm.
Jackman, you know, can play that kind of upstanding, um, upstanding lead, the good guy, really. But has the depth and the range to bring in other elements, some darker elements, which I think you see kind of explored in this film, especially as it progresses. You know, he kind of starts as a more I don't want to say pure or wholesome, but a more clean cut character at the beginning of
Yeah,
this film, and
like
he
the weight of life, it
really
hasn't really hit yet for
it
him.
it's almost like he starts in a very good place at the beginning of this movie and gradually is pulled down to Borden's level, right?
Mhm.
To kind of his moral level, if you will, or it's not that he has bad morals. It's
He
he's
has split morals,
yeah. Borden
like quite literally.
is a very self-centered and self-fulfilling character, um, and that leads to a lot of the conflict. I think
Yeah,
the initial conflict, at least in this movie, and it keeps building throughout.
and I think, and I do want to say, we do want to say this is going to be spoiler talk.
Oh
So
yeah,
even though this movie came out in 2006, if you haven't picked up on the fact that we may be discussing some spoilers, pause this video right now, go and watch the film, and then come back, and then we can talk about it some more. So, hi. Hi for everybody
welcome
that just
back.
came back. Yeah, welcome back. Did you enjoy the film? I hope you did, because that was a wild time, right?
I feel like
No,
if they
I
didn't
thought
enjoy the film, they were going to come back.
we're gonna come back
They're going to be like,
anyway.
"Screw you guys, unsubscribe."
Yeah, unsubscribe. But this film, it was interesting watching it, having already seen it, and so you knew what was going to happen, and so you almost try and watch it again, remembering sort of some of the elements that you can from the end of the film, but also I was trying to especially watch it, trying to do it with some fresh eyes,
Mhm.
to see, okay, if I'm a first time viewer, this is, I could see where they could pull this from this, but since I'm not a first time viewer, I can see what actually is going on.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of the fun, I think, of a film like this. The rewatchability factor on this film is very high.
Yeah. I think, having gone through a rewatch on this, I kept trying to be like, okay, I know how it ends. I want to try and catch it, right? I want to try and
Right.
catch the things there, or catch the signs that give away the ending. And even still, I'm like, I don't know how they do it. Watching it through, it's like, I know this is like where this happens, but like,
Right.
if I'm honestly looking at this and being honest with myself, I'm not catching up. I'm not picking up on this little clue here.
Yeah.
I remember the clue when we get to the end. When it's
Right.
revealed, I remember the clue, but it's like it's played off so smoothly that it's you don't pick it up.
The I guess the my real question for you would be, um, how do you think they managed to craft the story in such a way where you really don't pick up on what's going on until the very end, especially if you haven't seen it before? And even if you have seen it before, they've crafted it in such a way that if you don't remember every single detail, you're not
Yeah,
gonna you're not gonna notice it.
yeah. I think uh one I think one way they kind of keep you on your toes is, you mentioned that this is very much a through and through Chris Nolan film, and I would agree 100%. This actually kind of gets into one of my trivia facts. According to IMDb, there are over 140 time jumps in this, or time cuts in this movie, meaning when from one the cut between two scenes, it's non-sequential. You're making a leap in either forward or backward in time.
Right.
It could be years, it could be hours, but this movie is so non-sequential and it plays with time so much, which is very much
That's very Chris Nolan.
that's very Chris. I mean, I wrote down a few that just came to mind. I mean, you've got Inception plays with
Mhm.
time. Memento plays with time.
Yeah.
Interstellar plays with time. Tenet really plays with time.
Really plays with time.
Dunkirk plays with time.
Yeah.
So like looking at so many Chris Nolan films, like he manipulates time so well, and I think it's something he's perfected over the years in his storytelling ability, is how to manipulate time to get a reaction, or to get an emotion out of the audience, and to keep them kind of guessing. So I think that's one way that, because it's in the moments that I'd be like, okay, I'm supposed to try and notice something here, and as I would be trying to figure out, we would make a jump in time, and then
Oh,
would
okay. Yeah.
kind of catch me as in like, okay, now I'm trying to figure, okay, I got to figure out where we are now, and like put together it was almost harder to follow on a rewatch because my
Interesting.
mind
Yeah.
kept getting like sidetracked, and then I would have to jump back in and be like, wait, where are we now, and like putting the timeline pieces back into order in
So
my brain.
he essentially uses the editing to confuse us. I mean, it's very much a Kuleshov effect,
Yeah,
where it's our brains take film editing especially and create through lines and meaning from essentially nothing. And so the way in which it's been edited is to have us think certain things are happening when they aren't, or it's out of sequence.
mm-hmm.
So we jump to logical conclusions that don't end up being true just because of the way it's been edited. That's
Right.
fascinating. I never really thought of that. And you're absolutely right. Cause I mean, this is expertly edited.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is. But yeah, because traditionally, I guess you would say when you have a story like this where it jumps back and forth in time, I'd say you have like two roads, right? You have the well, if you start in media race, you start in the middle of things. You've got kind of the ongoing story, but then you've got kind of the prequel going
Mm-hmm.
on. What happened before that, and then eventually through the time jumps, they kind of meet up,
Yeah.
and then we kind of move forward to the conclusion. But this didn't do that. Yeah, they're like thinking about this. This is I think you hit the nail on the head on why this movie is so cool. Is that thinking about it, I didn't know there's 140, which also speaks to the editing
Yeah.
because you just and even the set design that you don't
Oh yeah.
realize that because I was trying to because I knew that Borden was two people
Yeah.
and I knew that really early on, so I was trying to figure out if Chris Nolan like left us any clues
Mm-hmm.
as to knowing which one was which because Rebecca Hall's character says in the film, you know, like, do you love me? And he goes like, you know, I love you. And she goes, not today, you know, and then she goes, oh, now you mean it today,
Yeah.
you know, and that's obviously a clue to the audience rewatching saying, oh, I see they're two different people, but that's the only difference.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out any other, you know, even at the end, I was still a little confused onto, okay, who is who at what
Mm-hmm.
point? Because it seemed like the Angie or the Borden that was in prison really loved that little girl,
Yeah.
but the Borden that was outside of prison was the one that actually loved the mom, Sarah.
Okay.
So, it, so
Yeah.
that's kind of weird. It's like obviously, you know, that's essentially your niece. So
Yeah.
you're
It
gonna,
is.
but it just the way in which he conveyed emotion is like, okay, were you in love with Sarah but not in love with a kid? And then the other one was in love with what is it, Olivia or Scarlett Johansson's
Yeah.
character and the kid. And so it's just like this amalgamation, this melding of two different characters, and because obviously, uh, Rebecca Hall was going to tell Scarlett Johansson something, and
Mm-hmm.
we as the audience assume that it's to tell them that okay, it's two different people, but maybe that's not even the case.
I
I
maybe
think
not.
probably,
Yeah.
but probably.
I mean,
Um,
I don't know. There's so many things that are there are so many character things I think that are not revealed.
Yeah.
Especially in Borden's family life, because really looking at this is Robert Angier's story.
Yeah, yeah. This is
Hugh
Angier's
Jackman.
film.
He is the main character, right? We learn things about Borden, and he's obviously an essential part to the movie. Um, we learn things about him, and things are revealed, but really for his character arc, there are pieces left out because this movie's not about his arc; it's about Angier's arc, right?
That's because he doesn't care. You know, Borden knows that it's just two guys. And so the whole motivation for this movie in general is Angier trying to figure out what the trick is.
See,
And it's just,
I would like to see this like an alternate version of this movie told from Borden's point of view,
yeah,
because like he really he's a good character. He's a very interesting character and does wonderful things for the story. But I don't believe he exists as a person, right?
hmm,
Just because like there are pieces of his character missing that aren't important to Angier's story, but
right,
like his whole you have to obviously be like have some kind of like super motivation behind wanting to be the best magician in the world. So much so that you and your twin brother are going to live two lives at the same time and switch on and off. Like no sane person does that. No
right,
rational person does that. So there has to be some inciting incident in their life for me to make these people make sense as characters, and or not as characters, as people. There has to be some inciting incident to get to where we pick up on. We don't see that because it's not important to Angier's story,
right. And
right?
I don't know if they're like, I can almost not picture because I looked at it this way, that both Bordens, one of them loved magic and the other one didn't. One of them loved magic and the other one loved his brother. And so like one of them was like the ingenieur or the
Mhm.
engineer essentially, and the other one was the magician. And so, but even that is pretty flimsy. Like I'd have to go and watch it again, or different parts of it, especially the ending where he goes, okay, you know, he's like, all right, we need to figure out how he does this trick or needs to do this. And then he says, you know what? Nope, we don't need to worry about it. Don't
Yeah,
worry about it. Don't go looking for it. And then this guy goes and looks for it. But if there are 140 time jumps, what if they literally just jumped day to day? It's like we need to figure it out. And then he turned into Fallon, and then Fallon was the other board, and then he's like, you know what, we don't need to worry about it. And then he turned
yeah.
back again. And it's
It's
like, I think the thing I struggle with most is what's the point when nobody else is around? Like other than I guess practicing being two people.
well, that's the thing. Like I feel like they perfect it so well that like you can't shut it off. Otherwise, once you shut it off,
Mm,
I mean, it's they are the when they go see the Chinese magician with
yeah,
the fishbowl trick. Um, they talk about how like how they see him in public and everything, and he's been seen in public, and he always walks that way
right.
to keep the honesty of the trick, or to keep the trick alive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I feel like in the same way that like that man has to live this life 24/7 to keep his trick alive, these two, they have to keep this trick, they have to live their lives like this 24/7, except they're living two lives simultaneously and they keep switching on and off, but they have to keep living, they can never be themselves,
Right.
because
Right. Yeah. Neither of them are themselves.
as
Yeah.
soon as they start turning it off and on, like human error comes into play and someone's going to make a mistake. Like someone's going to wake up and be like, "Oh, you're bored today. I thought I was bored today." And now we're out to brunch and we're both not in a disguise. So
And the
bruises up.
only time where there's cracks in that armor is when it's clear that the one Borden is drunk and the other one is
Mhm.
has Fallon, so he's not drunk at all, and where they're having essentially a double date.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's clear that the one that is supposed to be, Borden is actually Fallon, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But the whole fact that they essentially took a movie and was like, I almost feel like in a sense that Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan don't even know who's who from scene to scene.
They don't
Like they
need
wrote
to.
it, they don't, yeah, and they
You
don't need
don't
to.
need to. And that's to my point of like, I feel like Borden and Fallon exist as characters, not as people.
And and yeah, you're absolutely right. And saying it specifically that way, I mean, yeah, and that's why you would say that you would want kind of to see their perspective because the motivations don't always make sense. It's almost convenient for Angier's plot, or because we think as the audience, we're thinking as Angier does
Yeah.
because he's our intro into the story.
Mhm.
So we're thinking as Angier does and not as Borden. So Borden's characteristics, that whole thing, work through the lens of Angier and not through what actually happened. So that's why they aren't people. They just are almost plot conveniences in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean this cast is stacked, and it's not just
Mhm.
because two of the characters played two versions of themselves. Um, you know, it's so we've got Hugh Jackman, we got Michael Caine, Rebecca Hall, Christian Bale, Scarlett Johansson. I mean, that's just kind of the base layer
Yeah.
of the main players, and they're
David
all
Bowie, Andy
David
Serkis.
Bowie, Andy Serkis as well. Um, and David Bowie is Tesla.
I
I
dig
was kind of
it.
here for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was kind of here for it. I was like, all right.
It was so good that when I rewatched it this time, I legit was like, wait, David Bowie's in this? I didn't
Yeah.
realize it the first time.
Well, and it's so weird when Andy Serkis isn't CGI
Yeah.
because he does so much motion capture. It's like,
I'm like,
you're a
wait,
real person.
he's gonna be actually himself.
Yeah. Um, but I think when I'm trying to rank, what are my favorite kind of magician films, and I'm not talking about Harry Potter. That's a completely different
Yeah.
thing. Those are fantasy, but like really kind of films about magicians or magic. The things that I can think of is the Now You See Me
Yeah.
films, and both of those are clearly are not thought out as well. They're also way more linear. It's almost like an
Mhm.
Ocean's 11 meets The Prestige,
Mhm.
and three, those tricks can't really be done. Like they don't actually do them, but all of these can be done except for the whole Tesla thing.
Yeah.
But that's not really a trick. That's just science. The tricks
That's
are all
it's
done.
science fiction.
Right. Yeah. No.
You can't really. I mean, yes, they're cloning sheep and crap like this, but like,
Yeah, shout out to Dolly. Dolly the sheep.
you can't clone people yet, and you sure as heck couldn't clone people back
Yeah.
in turn of the century
Do you
Colorado.
think do you think that OJ wants to
Oh my
clone Nicole
god.
Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman?
We're
So
not getting in
maybe
an
they could
OJ
team.
tangent.
That's the Prestige too. They all team up. Ron Goldman, Nicole Brown Simpson, and OJ team up to find the real killer. And the Prestige is the fact that OJ did it the whole time.
Oh my god.
I told you we were going to talk about OJ in every single one of these from now on. Anyway, anyway, uh, yeah. So, and this movie is also one of the things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is the cinematography
Mhm.
because Nolan has a very specific style of cinematography,
Yeah.
and it's hard to describe, as somebody, and I guess we can look at this from more of like a layman's view as for people watching. But there are certain sequences where, especially when Angier finally gets the box with that machine in it for the first time, and it's an
Mhm.
empty room and that box, and there's like this slow dolly shot, just like
It's
really, really slow.
in a way that reminded me emotionally. It reminded me of two things. It reminded me of um the obelisk from 2001: A Space Odyssey,
Okay.
and it
Oh,
reminded me of the Room of Requirement from Harry Potter.
okay.
Like how both of those things were all three of these things, how they're like introduced
Hmm.
as far as visually how they're introduced. Like it had this same like it had this same mystifying unknown quality to it, right?
Yeah.
It was presented in a way visually that we as the audience don't know what these things are, but like in movies like this, there's a lot the audience doesn't know. Like the whole, if you're watching this movie for the first time, um, there's so many things that you just kind of have to accept that like I don't
Mm.
understand this, or I don't know everything about this, or this is not. There's no real life equivalent to this, and so that there's a level of acceptance there as the audience of like your suspension of disbelief is like, okay, I don't understand how this thing is, but do the characters understand how it is? And 2001: A Space Odyssey, the room of requirement from Harry Potter, and the scene where the box is revealed in Prestige here, all three of them are shot in a way that when you look at it from the lens of the characters in the scene approaching these things, they don't understand how it works either. That's
Right.
why it feels different. It feels there's the sense it's a suspension. There's suspense, there's tension that you feel for the characters and the way these are shot, because not only do we not as the audience not know how they work, the characters don't know how they work either.
Well, and I would also say, I think the camera itself, like,
Yeah.
I don't think he shoots on digital. I would be shocked if Chris Nolan shot on digital. But it's hard to describe. But there are moments in like Interstellar that it's kind of these. Yeah, you've got this like obelisk,
Mm-hmm.
or this thing that nobody really knows what it is. The characters don't know, and the audience doesn't know at the time, and it's kind of engulfed in this larger shot. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
small, and it kind of pans a little bit, but it's like the pan is so slow. It's hard to describe. But do you know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about? Like
There's an un
it's almost like a little shake
yeah,
too.
it's uncomfortable. It's
Mm,
there's a slight sense of discomfort in it. It's not still, but it's not moving at a pace fast enough that seems intentional, and so that makes us as the audience uncomfortable, and that's to convey the feeling of discomfort, the anxiety the character is feeling as it is encountering this object.
because it's different than like Spielberg. So
Mm-hmm.
Spielberg is famous for his dolly shots as well.
Yeah.
Look at Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? And he kind of zooms in as because it's not, he doesn't zoom. It is a dolly
Mm-hmm.
that brings it forward. And, Harrison Ford's like this. And then we're kind of, that shot is symbolizing him figuring out, okay, what exactly am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to grab the sand? Am I still going to do this? What's everything going on? Do I want to do this? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you're discovering, you're getting meaning. Or Road to Perdition has a very famous kind of dolly tracking shot, or it's a dolly shot, and Tom Hanks is messing with a gun, and it kind of goes over, and he's kind of, you see his back, and he's messing around, and then it kind of pops up over and looks at exactly what he's doing, and it's this demonstration of meaning.
Mm-hmm.
um but I would say it's just a little bit different with Christopher Nolan.
Spielberg uses the dolly shot to pull us into the character's state of mind.
Yeah.
He uses the dolly shot to pull us into the character, whether it's into focusing on the character's reaction or into focusing on the character's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
In those two examples that you mentioned, Nolan uses the camera to pull us into the character's psyche about the objects around them.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I would never have thought of it that way.
Nolan,
Yeah.
Nolan does that uncomfortable dolly into objects.
Right. Right. And then pair that with a score, which I think it was Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer did a lot of his scores. Pair that with that and the kind of the violin, and just adds to this tension that is just kind of growing with it. But that's just something that I thought was just really interesting and something I've noticed in all Chris Nolan films, and wanted to kind of mention it here.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I actually, speaking of Tom Hanks, I had a dream last night where I met Tom Hanks. He came into Flick's Brewhouse, and I work at Flick's Brewhouse, and he came in, and he wanted to see an extended cut of Cocaine Bear, but for some reason, and I guess the antagonist in this was played by like an Indian person, and he said, "Good Lord." He goes, "Well, there's a dub in this extended edition where it's dubbed over by me." No. It's dubbed over by just like a white guy, and it sounds like super menacing, like a Christopher Nolan film. This was the dream. That has like nothing to do with anything, but I did have that dream last night. And yeah, because I guess they announced that they are coming out on digital with like an extended cut of Cocaine Bear, a movie that neither of us have seen.
No.
But you know,
you
that really
kind of want to see it. I have zero interest to see it.
I do kind of want to see it. I just, see what all the hype's about. But anyway, forget Cocaine Bear. We're talking about The Prestige. So now is the time where I kind of wanted to talk about our Rosebud and Thorn. Jake, what is your Rosebud and Thorn this week?
So Rose is going to go to Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. I think they obviously carried the movie
for sure.
well, and they play off each other incredibly well. They're two incredible actors, and they work together exceptionally well in this movie. And so I have to give it to them. I mean, this obviously the standout performances there. So I had a bud written down.
Okay.
And I'm going to disagree with it now that we've talked about this. My bud was time. Because like when I rewatched it, I was like, is all the time, and I realized like how much we were manipulating time. I was like, is this all necessary? And like, okay, there's part of me that I think still would like to, if I was editing this film, or if I'm Chris Nolan and I'm putting together this film in post-production, I would have liked to have just sat down and been like, for the sake of just shits and giggles trying it, let's tell it straight through. Put it together straight through and just see what it is. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't have its suspense, its freshness, its ingenuity. Maybe it's too easy to pick up on things. Maybe it's not interesting. But on the rewatch, my initial reaction was like, is all this time manipulation necessary? But now that we've talked about it, I'm leaning more away from that, because I'm like, it is what keeps you on your toes.
Right.
It is what makes this different from other magic movies.
Yeah. And I also want to know who the heck on IMDb came up with the 140 time jumps.
Somebody
how could you figure that out? Like literally how? Like that, I don't understand. I think
the official number they said was like 146, which I'm like,
yeah, well, 146 lies and deception. That's every day more lies. That's a quote from Rogue One. but it doesn't make any sense how they could come up with that. Because if you could re-edit this, if some like goat re-edits this linearly, linearly,
Linearly.
I don't.
I
I'm
think
gonna
that's
have
the
to.
word.
I'm gonna have to rewatch this episode to know what I said, but I know it wasn't that. Um, if some guy or gal or whoever re-edits this, I think you're right. I think it loses most of its luster. I think it's
Probably.
probably a lot more obvious
Yeah.
to piece together and to know kind of the ending before. And even if we started in media race
Mm-hmm.
and we started where we did and then went back to the beginning, like literally, even if we told the story the way it seems like it's being told, which it's not, but the way in which it seems like it's being told, where we start, you know, right before he gets Tesla's device, and we go back to the beginning and kind of get caught up and go straight forward. But all the time jumps make it really confusing. Even if we told it like that, I think it would have been a lot easier to pick up on. Also, this kind of just came to me. Do you think the one Borden who was kind of drunk and was kind of mean to Sarah at that double dinner was the one that got buried?
Maybe. I mean,
Because he
I
says he
would probably.
loses something he almost lost something very valuable to him.
So wouldn't it be the other one then?
I
It'd
don't
be
know.
the,
Life is probably more valuable than your brother.
but without, but without his twin, life as he knew it ceased to exist, and he's no longer, the greatest magician.
Rap. Like it could literally be either of them.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's
That's
so
the beauty of this
ambiguous.
movie. Is like it keeps you guessing every time you think
Yeah,
you figure it
you're right.
out.
Because I thought that was I thought I figured that out. Pretty hardline stance of okay, that obviously was the guy that got buried. But no, apparently maybe not. Thanks, Jake.
You're welcome.
Um, yeah, that's so
The
many.
beauty of having a co-host.
Yeah, I mean, I already think life itself is confusing, and then you watch this movie and you're like, I don't. Where's the script? Can I have the script, please? Like, can I have the script for life? Um, that'd be great. Thanks. Just like in the Muppet movie where they they find the Muppets. Electric Man finds the Muppets in the desert purely because the Muppets, like Kermit, had left the script for the Muppet movie in the
Oh my
church.
gosh.
I love that movie,
You
but
do.
they're literally like, "How did you find us?" And he goes, "You left the script." It's incredible. Um, but yeah. So okay, so that's your
So
not so
that
bud
that
bud.
that was my bud that I'm throwing out now. It was a bud that bloomed into a rose. And then I have no thorn.
Valid, very
So
valid. I think for
really,
me,
really, I just have a rose.
yeah, I know. I think for me, you already mentioned the performances, so I won't mention that. I think that the writing, the dialogue specifically, is expertly crafted
Mhm.
because it it's so if you go into this movie, we kind of talked about this beginning, like if you go into this movie not knowing what this is at all, you read one thing and you get one thing out of everything they say.
Mhm.
You create one mindset or one understanding or one lens of viewing for the movie. But when you watch it again, you may pick up something different. And every time you watch it, the dialogue is so ambiguous, but it's ambiguous in a way that also makes you feel like you understand what they're saying. And that's the point. It's not
Mm.
ambiguous to be ambiguous. It's not like the Ten Commandments where it's apparently Shakespeare in biblical in biblical times. It's literally it's written in such a way where you feel like that's the trick. You think you understand what's going on, and the dialogue feeds into that. But even on rewatch, you think you understand what's going on, and maybe you don't. And thus my query into who was the guy that was in the box as compared to the one that was drunk. Was it the same person? Was it different? I thought it's pretty obvious the same person, and then you just threw a wrench into that. So I think the writing, the dialogue, the way it's crafted is just bonkers good. It's just bonkers good.
It's a well crafted story.
Yeah. And just talking about it. And that's one of the beauties of having conversations about film, because the two people can pull different things from it. And you have this dialogue where it bounces back and forth, and you realize the brilliance that you didn't even see in the beginning because somebody else saw something different. And that's one of the beauties of film fandom. So I would say that's my rose. My bud is purely frustrating, and it is time. It is frustrating because you realize you don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And I like to know what's going on.
Really?
So,
I didn't know that about you.
yeah. Yeah. You had no idea, did you? So I think it's not a problem with the movie. It's a problem with me. The bud is something I need to work on, not the movie.
Work on letting go, Ben.
Yeah. Letting go.
Let my people go.
And my thorn, I don't have a thorn. Now, when we get to Tenet, my thorn's going to be the sound mix. It's like almost the same in the things I like about Tenet and The Prestige, but the sound mix in that movie is so god awful that when I saw it in theaters, and this was during the pandemic, so there weren't a ton of showings, I was like, I need to wait for this to come out so I can look at the closed captions because I don't know what they're saying, like at all. I think we have it scheduled for this year. We're gonna watch that movie, and I almost want you to watch it without the subtitles because you won't understand what they're saying. Yeah. And then you're gonna have to watch it again with the subtitles. It's really frustrating.
Anyway. What is that? July we're doing Nolan leading up to
Nolan. Yeah, we're doing like a Nolan month.
Yeah, leading up to Oppenheimer.
My guess is that I probably already put The Prestige on there, and so we may have to flip it with another. But he has plenty of great movies. Yeah, Oppenheimer's going to be really good. But yeah. So I don't really have a thorn. I think this movie is executed to perfection in what it's trying to conceive and portray and put out there. I think it's executed spectacularly. Final thoughts. I don't know. This may be.
Hang on, we gotta say who we are, who each other are. You skipped that.
Well, this is not a linear podcast. So. Checkmate. Checkmate. Okay, who do you think I am?
Well, I think
other than oblivious because I forgot about it.
I wrote down that you're Andy Serkis's character, purely because of the way he fanboys when he meets Robert Angier, and he's like, "You're Robert Angier. You're the great Danton," and goes on. It's like it goes from like, "Who are you? Get off my lawn," kind of guy to, "Oh my gosh, you're like incredible. Yeah. I love you." And I feel like if we ever met a celebrity together, you would be the one that would fanboy about it. Now,
I would either fanboy or I would purposefully like anti-fanboy and act like I have no idea who they are because I don't want them to. Like, I have an issue with. I don't want to say I like putting people in their place, but sometimes pegs need to be knocked down. And so there are certain people or like there are certain celebrities that if I were to meet, I would like Ewan McGregor. I would not have, or Harrison Ford, I would not have the self-control to act like I don't know.
You would cry a little bit probably. And Harrison Ford would be like, "What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Get a hold of yourself. Like, smoke a blunt."
Oh, wow, kid. You're weird. Yeah, but other celebrities I would meet and I would kind of want to knock them down a peg. Like, you're not all knowing. No. You're not Jesus Christ, so I don't really want to. But I think
I ever meet a Kardashian, so spot on. I'm like, what's up?
Yeah, like a Kardashian. Yeah.
Like a fake celebrity.
Like, I'm sorry, who are you?
Which one are you?
I'm Kim. Like, okay, Kim who? Kim Possible? No. I'm Kim Kardashian. It's like I was like, why are you famous? Because wait, you know why she's famous? OJ.
That's not why she's famous.
Yes, it is.
No,
Well,
it's
okay.
not.
Her dad is famous because of OJ.
Yes.
And then she became famous for
A sex tape.
being I thought this was supposed to be PG. I was gonna say something clever like being an actress, of very low stature or something.
Actress is
um,
stretching it.
yeah, right. Being a mogul. Anyway, I think you're spot on, especially since I talked about a dream where I met Tom Hanks. I literally just talked about that. Um, and yeah, so I for you, I really see you as Michael Caine.
Really?
For yes, one because you love telling Michael Caine stories about him and Peter O'Toole.
No. It's the Michael Caine story I like telling is it's about when he met John Wayne. I'm gonna go ahead and tell it now because I
Yeah,
love
go ahead.
telling this story. Michael Caine tells it he had just made Alfie. So that was really Alfie is kind of I mean he'd been acting for a while and had some, smaller parts, but Alfie was kind of his breakout role. And
Mm-hmm.
they were shooting in Hollywood and they put him up at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And he got there like a couple days before they started shooting, and he didn't know anyone in Hollywood at the time. Um, so he's in this big fancy hotel in Beverly Hills. So he would just go down and people watch in the lobby to see like stars that he could see walking through. And he tells the story about how one day he was just sitting down there having a cup of tea and this big, the doors fly open and there's wind blowing all around and dust is everywhere. And all of a sudden, in full cowboy regalia, John Wayne walks in off a helicopter and walks by him and they strike up a conversation. He's like, your name Michael Caine? He's like, yes, Mr. Wayne. And he's like, you're in that Alfie movie,
Yes,
weren't you?
sorry. Yes, Master Wayne.
You were
Yeah.
in you were Alfie, weren't you? Yeah, yes,
Also
Mr. Wayne.
Alfred, Master Wayne.
um, you're gonna be a star, kid. You're gonna be a star. Let me give you some advice. Talk low, talk slow, and don't say too much. And also don't wear suede shoes. And Michael Caine's like, why not wear suede shoes? And he's like, because, like I said, you're gonna be a star. Aren't you listening? And you're gonna be in the men's room someday, taking a pee at a urinal, and the guy next to you is gonna be standing there and turn around and say, John Wayne. And you're going to get piss all over your suede shoes. And it's impossible to clean piss out of suede. I
Yeah.
love that story. So never wear suede shoes, kids, if you're going to be a star.
Right. Yeah. Also never wear suede shoes
Yeah. Unless
unless
you're
they're blue.
Elvis.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless they're
Elvis is about
blue.
the only one that could get away from it. Get away
Well,
with it.
also, remember when I said that I thought that this podcast was going to be PG?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, no, I was thinking about Richard Harris and Peter O'Toole,
Yes.
which is a story for another time.
Those are funny.
Yes. But also, I don't know, just because you're helpful, but also no nonsense at the same time. And you also kind of, how many times have I called you about a girl and been like, man, I I think that she's yeah, okay, shut up. Yeah, put them
A
fingers down.
lot.
Yeah. I was like, man, I think she could be it, and I don't want to jump the gun here. I know I've done that X, Y, and Z times before. But I think maybe, and then you just see straight through it. You're like, no. You're like, she's not texting you back. She's just too polite to say shut up. It's like one of those things, right? And Michael Caine's character saw straight through the act and said, okay, it's just two people. And Angier, like, that's impossible. And then he goes on this quest to duplicate himself a billion times, only like 100. But if you look at it, actually, going into final thoughts, if you look at it, the original Angier does not exist anymore. And it's not because, okay, he's replicated himself a bunch of times, because theoretically, the original could always be transported. It's the very first time he does it, the person that could have been transformed, the person that could have uh, transported, the person that could have been transported was shot. So the original Angier does not exist. But I would say, final thoughts, this movie is about a man who becomes obsessed with trying to figure out a secret that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a commentary on obsession, and I think in a way, like, being a workaholic,
Yeah.
again in extreme fashion, but this is Angier's profession, and he's so obsessed with being the best that he works himself into an obsession that ends up getting him killed.
Yeah.
And so I think this, in addition to being entertaining and suspenseful and new and fresh, is also, I think, a commentary on knowing what's important in life, and not getting caught up in obsessions, and in getting caught up in things that are out of your control.
Right. I guess my question for you is, who's the better magician?
Gordon.
Interesting. I was going to say Angier.
Really? Why did he say Angier?
Because for me, magic, I think, is more about the presentation. So and he's obviously a great showman.
Mm-hmm.
He's the greatest showman. He's a great showman. And so the presentation is there, especially when you had that device with the bird at one point, and just the suspense and the way in which he talks. It's obvious Hugh Jackman came from the stage. In Australia. He was an actor, like a stage actor. And just the way in which he conducts himself on stage is so compelling to me that even if some of the stuff isn't really magic or things like that, it was just so compelling. Even the transported man with drunk Hugh Jackman, even that to me was just so impressive to watch. Yeah. Why would you say Borden is the better magician?
I say Borden is the better magician because he is able to conceive a trick that, even when Angier is told how he does it, Angier doesn't believe that's how he does it. He does the trick. He does this trick, and he's not the traditional showman, right? He's not the better on stage showman, but he's so committed to this trick that even when the answer is presented, you believe he's such a good, Angier believes he's such a good magician that he doesn't believe the answer. He doesn't believe the truth.
Yeah, that's a better point than my point.
I think your point is very good. I think you can debate this all day long.
It's literally this whole movie. What has the last hour been? Us saying our opinions and being like, wait, actually, the other opinion also makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's kind of changing my opinion to theirs, but then they think, wait, actually, your opinion is the right one, and so they change their opinion, and it just vice versa. That's the whole movie, and that's one of the beauties of it. Yeah. But anyway, our question for you folks watching is, what did you think of The Prestige? I hope you've watched it, because if you didn't, spoiler alert. Let us know your thoughts, your ranking down below. Make sure to follow us on social media, Jake, myself, the Cinephile Pod on Instagram. And also hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell to get all notifications on upcoming content. And don't worry, we aren't magicians here. We'll be back here next week talking about Guardians of the Galaxy. So until then, for Jake Biller, I'm Ben Sparrow. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next week. And cut.